What if Elvis Presley's first giant hit for his new record label was a song the executives absolutely hated? What if they thought its dark, strange sound would kill his career before it even started? And what if the song's famous ghostly echo wasn't created by fancy studio gear, but by a microphone placed at the end of a long, empty hallway? The story of Heartbreak Hotel is not what you think it is. It's a story of chance, of desperation, and of an artist who knew exactly what he wanted, even when no one else understood. It's a story that begins not in a recording studio, but with a tragic note left behind in a hotel room. Number 17, who actually wrote the song? Mae Boren Axton was a high school English teacher from Jacksonville, Florida. She also worked as a part-time radio personality and a freelance publicist for Colonel Tom Parker. Tommy Durden was a steel guitar player and budding songwriter from Georgia. Elvis Presley was a singer who at this point had never officially written a song in his life. Yet all three of them share the official writing credit for Heartbreak Hotel. The real story is a classic music business tale of opportunity and negotiation. The song's core idea came from Tommy Durden. He was the one who saw the newspaper article that sparked the whole thing. He had a fragment of a bluesy, mournful tune in his head, but he was stuck. He brought the idea to his friend and collaborator Mae Boren Axton. Axton had connections. She knew Elvis. She knew the Colonel. She immediately recognized the potential in Durden's dark idea. They worked on it together in Axton's kitchen. She polished the lyrics, helped structure the melody, and used her industry savvy to shape it into something a recording artist could use. By all accounts, the creative work was done entirely by Durden and Axton. So where does Elvis come in? This is where the business side takes over. When Axton presented the song to Elvis in his hotel room in Nashville in November 1955, he loved it instantly. He knew this was the sound he was looking for. Axton and Colonel Parker knew that getting a piece of the publishing rights for their star artist was a standard industry practice. It ensured the artist had a bigger financial stake in the song's success and gave them a powerful incentive to promote it. Axton offered Elvis a deal. If he recorded it, he would get a co-writing credit and a third of the royalties. It was a purely business arrangement. Elvis did not write a single word or note of Heartbreak Hotel. He was the interpreter, the performer who brought it to life. The credit was his reward for choosing the song and making it his own. This practice was common at the time, but it forever tied Elvis's name to the creation of a song he only performed, albeit brilliantly. The deal was struck, and a handshake sealed the fate of one of rock and roll's most enduring and mysterious songs. Number 16, what was the real Heartbreak Hotel? The song's title sounds like a fictional place, a grim motel dreamed up for a blues song, but it was inspired by a real story. It was a story of profound loneliness that ended in a small hotel room. Tommy Durden read about it in the Miami Herald. The article described the death of a man who had taken his own life. The man was a drifter, an anonymous figure who had checked into a hotel and left behind a short, heartbreaking note. The note didn't have a name, it just said, "I walk a lonely street." That single phrase struck Durden like a lightning bolt, and it was a perfect summary of despair. The man in the newspaper story was later identified as Alvin Krolik, a small-time artist and criminal. He had a long history of run-ins with the law. His life was one of constant movement and instability. The story goes that he had been involved in a robbery in Chicago and the crime had ended badly. He fled, moving from city to city, and eventually ended up in Miami. He was alone. He felt cornered. The hotel where he ended his life was not called the Heartbreak Hotel. But in his final moments, he created the idea. Durden took that phrase, "I walk a lonely street," to Mae Axton. He told her about the story of the lonely man in the hotel. Axton immediately saw the song in it. She told Durden, "We've got to put a Heartbreak Hotel at the end of that lonely street." And together, they built a narrative around that single tragic sentence. They imagined a place where the brokenhearted go, in a place at the end of the road filled with gloom and despair. The bellhop's tears, the desk clerk dressed in black, the souls who are always sad. All of these images flowed from the true story of one man's final, Lonely Note. The song is not just a collection of bluesy lines, it's a direct echo of a real person's final words, filtered through the imagination of two songwriters who saw the universal tragedy in his story. Number 15. Why did the record label hate it so much? When Elvis Presley signed with RCA Victor in late 1955, the label thought they had bought a guaranteed hitmaker. They paid an unprecedented $40,000 to buy his contract from Sun Records. They were expecting the same kind of upbeat, high-energy rockabilly that had made him a regional star. And songs like That's All Right and Mystery Train, they wanted fun, fast, and commercially safe music. Heartbreak Hotel was none of those things. After the recording session in January 1956, the producer Steve Sholes sent the tapes to RCA's executives in New York. The reaction was one of pure horror. They hated it. The head of A&R, Bill Bullock, bluntly stated that it was a morbid, gloomy song and predicted it would ruin the kid's career. Another executive, Chick Crumpacker, famously said, "It doesn't sound like anything." They were confused by the strange, booming echo. They were put off by the dark, depressing lyrics about a hotel full of broken people. The tempo was slow, dragging, and filled with empty space. The guitar solo was weird and jagged. It sounded nothing like Perry Como or Eddie Fisher, the label's biggest stars. The executives were convinced they had made a terrible mistake. They had spent a fortune on this new singer, and his very first single was, in their minds, an unlistenable, uncommercial disaster. They strongly urged Steve Sholes to shelve the song and record something else, anything else. They wanted to cut their losses before Elvis's RCA debut became a national embarrassment. The pressure on Sholes was immense. He was the man who had championed signing Elvis. His own reputation was on the line. But Sholes, along with Elvis himself, believed in the record. He had to fight his own bosses to even get the song released. It was a battle of wills between the old guard of the music industry and the new sound of rock and roll. The executive saw financial risk. Elvis and Sholes heard the future. Number 14. How did a hallway create the song's eerie sound? One of the most defining features of Heartbreak Hotel is its strange, cavernous echo. It makes the song sound like it was recorded in a vast, empty warehouse or a haunted ballroom. This sound was not created with any special studio technology. There were no echo chambers or tape delay machines used, which were the standard tools of the time. The effect was created using the physical space of the recording studio itself, and it happened almost by accident. The session took place on January 10th, 1956, at RCA's studio in Nashville. The studio was not a purpose-built recording facility. It was a repurposed office building, and the main recording room was acoustically dead. It had no natural reverberation. When they started recording, the sound was flat and dry. It lacked the atmosphere that Elvis wanted. Elvis had played the demo for the band, and he was trying to capture that same kind of raw, spooky vibe. He kept telling the producer, Steve Sholes, that he wanted it to sound like the Sun Records echo on his earlier recordings. But Sam Phillips's slapback echo at Sun was a carefully guarded secret created with 2 linked tape recorders. The RCA engineers didn't know how to replicate it. Frustrated, the recording engineer, Bob Ferris, had an idea. He noticed the studio had a long, wide hallway with hard surfaces. He thought it might have some natural echo. During a break, he ran a line out from the mixing console down the hallway and placed a microphone at the far end. He then blended the sound from the studio microphone with the sound from the hallway microphone. The result was instant magic. The long, empty corridor acted as a natural echo chamber. It gave the recording a deep, lingering, and slightly distorted reverberation that was unlike anything else on the radio. It was this improvised, low-tech solution that gave Heartbreak Hotel its signature ghostly atmosphere. The sound the RCA executives hated was the sound of a hallway. Number 13, what happened during the tense first RCA session. The recording session for Heartbreak Hotel was Elvis's first for his new label, RCA. The stakes were incredibly high. He had left the small, intimate environment of Sun Records in Memphis, where he worked with just Sam Phillips, Scotty Moore, and Bill Black. Now, he was in a corporate studio in Nashville surrounded by seasoned professionals and executives. The pressure was on to prove that RCA's huge investment in him was worth it. Elvis arrived with a clear vision for the song. He had a demo, a simple recording made by Mae Axton's friend Glenn Reeves, and he played it for the musicians over and over. He wanted to capture its dark, bluesy mood, but his band, Scotty Moore on guitar and Bill Black on bass, along with DJ Fontana on drums, were used to their fast rockabilly style. They struggled to find the right groove for this slow, sparse, and gloomy song. There was a palpable tension in the room. The musicians were trying to adapt to a new sound, a new studio, and a new producer. To make matters more complicated, the producer Steve Scholes brought in two of Nashville's top session musicians to flesh out the sound: the legendary guitarist Chet Atkins and a young pianist named Floyd Kramer. It was the first time Elvis had ever recorded with a piano player or a drummer. The dynamic of his small trio was completely changed. Atkins, a master guitarist, was reportedly unsure of what to play. He added some subtle rhythm guitar, but he was careful not to step on Scotty Moore's parts. Floyd Kramer added the simple, haunting piano chords that became crucial to the song's atmosphere. But it took time for all these musicians, who had never played together before, to gel. They did 31 takes of the B-side, I Was the One, before they even started on Heartbreak Hotel. By the time they got to the main song, they were tired and frustrated. Yet, out of that tension and uncertainty, they managed to capture a performance that was raw, powerful, and utterly unique. Number 12. Why did Elvis tell a different story about the song's origin? The true origin of Heartbreak Hotel, with its roots in a newspaper story about a man's lonely death, is a well-documented fact. Mayborn Axton and Tommy Durden always told this story consistently. But Elvis, for his own reasons, sometimes told a completely different and far more dramatic tale. He liked to embellish the truth and create his own myths. In some interviews, Elvis claimed that he came up with the idea for the song himself. He would tell a story about meeting a walking group of bikers. He said he struck up a conversation with their leader, who was a writer. According to Elvis's version, this biker told him he had written a song about walking down a lonely street to a place where the brokenhearted stay. Elvis claimed he bought the song from this anonymous biker and then worked on it himself. This story was pure fiction. It had all the elements of a good rock and roll myth: a chance encounter on the road, a mysterious stranger, a song born from the counterculture. It sounded much cooler than the real story about a school teacher and a steel guitar player in a kitchen. Why did he make it up? It's likely a combination of factors. Elvis was a natural storyteller and showman. He understood the power of a good backstory. The biker story made him seem more connected to the raw, rebellious spirit of his music. It also gave him a more active role in the song's creation, reinforcing his image as a true artist, not just a singer performing other people's material. It might also have been a way to deflect from the song's genuinely dark and tragic origins, which may have been uncomfortable to discuss repeatedly. Whatever the reason, Elvis's fictional story added another layer of mystery to a song that was already shrouded in it. And it was a classic example of Elvis, the mythmaker, shaping his own legend one tall tale at a time. Number 11. Who were the unsung musicians in the room? When people think of Elvis's early band, they think of Scotty Moore on guitar and Bill Black on bass. They were the Blue Moon Boys, the core of his sound at Sun Records, but the recording of Heartbreak Hotel was different. It marked the first time Elvis's sound was expanded with additional musicians, and their contributions were crucial to the final record, even if they aren't as famous. The first was Chet Atkins. At the time, Atkins was already a respected Nashville guitarist and a rising star as a producer for RCA. Steve Scholes brought him into the session to add some professional polish. Atkins played acoustic rhythm guitar on the track. His playing is not flashy, it's subtle and supportive. He provides a steady, underlying rhythm that anchors the song and fills out the sound, giving it more body than the sparse trio format would have allowed. He was a seasoned pro in a room of young rockers, and his quiet professionalism helped stabilize the tense session. The second, and perhaps more influential, addition was the pianist Floyd Kramer. This was one of Kramer's very first sessions with Elvis, and he was still developing his signature style. On Heartbreak Hotel, he doesn't use the slip note technique that would later make him famous. Instead, he plays simple, stark, block chords that punctuate the gloomy atmosphere. His piano provides the harmonic foundation and adds a layer of mournful color to the track, The little piano fills between Elvis's vocal lines are essential to the song's empty, lonely feeling. It was the first time piano was a key element on an Elvis record, and it pointed the way toward the richer, more orchestrated sound that would define his later career. Without Atkins and Kramer, Heartbreak Hotel would have been a very different and much emptier record. Number 10, How Did a B-Side Almost Steal the Spotlight? The RCA executives were terrified of Heartbreak Hotel. They thought it was a career-ending mistake. So they placed all their bets on the song recorded for the B-side, I Was the One. To them, this was the real hit. I Was the One was a much more conventional song for the time. It was a mid-tempo ballad with a doo-wop feel, romantic lyrics, and a straightforward structure. It was safe, familiar, and sounded like something that could get played on the radio next to the Platters or Pat Boone. RCA promoted I Was the One heavily. They sent it to radio stations and pushed it as the A-side. For the first few weeks after the single was released on January 27th, 1956, their strategy seemed to be working. I Was the One started to get some airplay and began climbing the charts. It eventually reached number 23 on the Billboard Pop chart, a respectable showing for a new artist's first single on a major label. The executives felt vindicated. They believed they had dodged a bullet. But then something strange started happening. People who bought the record for I Was the One were flipping it over. Disc jockeys, prompted by listener requests, started playing the weird, spooky song on the other side. Heartbreak Hotel began to generate its own organic buzz. It was so different, so stark and compelling, that it couldn't be ignored. The public's curiosity and fascination with this strange new sound quickly eclipsed the more conventional B-side. Soon, Heartbreak Hotel overtook I Was the One in airplay and sales. It started its slow, unstoppable climb to the top of the charts. The song that RCA tried to bury ended up becoming the main event, proving that the public was ready for something new, even if the record executives weren't. Number 9, What Was So Strange About Scotty Moore's Guitar Solo? Scotty Moore was one of the architects of the rockabilly guitar sound. His playing was typically fast, clean, and melodic, filled with country and fingerstyle influences. His guitar work on Heartbreak Hotel is a complete departure from that. The solo is jarring, dissonant, and full of raw, bluesy aggression. It sounds less like a polished Nashville session player and more like an old Delta bluesman having a bad night. And that was exactly the point. During the recording session, Scotty was struggling to find the right feel for the song. He tried several approaches, but nothing seemed to fit the dark mood. According to some accounts, he was getting frustrated. He felt the song was too slow and morose. Finally, Elvis and the producer encouraged him to just cut loose and play something raw and blues-inspired. What he came up with was 2 short, stabbing guitar breaks that are among the most memorable in rock and roll history. The solo is not technically complex. It's built around a simple repeated phrase, but it's the execution that makes it so effective. Moore plays with a slightly distorted, biting tone. He bends the string sharply, creating a sound that is almost like a pained cry. There are moments where the notes seem to clash with the underlying chords, creating a sense of unease and tension. It's messy, raw, and completely unpredictable. It perfectly captures the song's feeling of despair and desperation. It was a sound that was completely alien to mainstream pop music in 1956. It was the sound of the blues, unfiltered and unapologetic, dropped right into the middle of a pop record. That strange, angry solo was a key part of what made the song so shocking and so revolutionary. Number 8, How Did Television Turn a Flop into a Phenomenon? When Heartbreak Hotel was released in late January 1956, it was not an instant hit. It entered the Billboard chart at a lowly number 68. For over a month, it stalled. RCA's fears seemed to be coming true. The song was too weird for radio. It was on the verge of becoming a flop. What saved it and what launched Elvis into the stratosphere of American fame was television. Elvis made his national television debut on January 28th, 1956, on the Stage Show, hosted by Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey. He performed Shake, Rattle, and Roll, and I Got a Woman. He was a charismatic but still somewhat contained performer. He returned to the show over the next several weeks. On his third appearance on February 11th, he performed Heartbreak Hotel for the first time on television. The performance was a revelation. It wasn't just his voice, it was his presence. He snarled the lyrics, his legs started shaking, and he seemed to be channeling the song's dark energy. The teenage audience had never seen anything like it. After that performance, the record started to move. The sales jumped, radio stations started playing it. He performed it again on Stage Show, and then, most famously, on The Milton Berle Show on April 3rd, 1956. By this point, his stage persona was fully formed. He gyrated, sneered, and poured every ounce of emotion into the performance. The reaction was explosive. The song shot up the charts. On April 21st, it hit #1 on the Billboard Top 100, where it stayed for 7 weeks. Television bypassed the traditional gatekeepers of radio and brought Elvis's raw, electrifying presence directly into American living rooms. It allowed people to see the artist behind the strange, spooky record, and once they saw him, they were hooked. The flop became a phenomenon, all thanks to a few minutes of black and white screen time. Number 7, could the song have been written in just 22 minutes? The legend surrounding the creation of Heartbreak Hotel is that it was written in a flash of pure inspiration. The story, often repeated by Mae Boren Axton, is that once Tommy Durden showed her the newspaper clipping with the line, "I walk a lonely street," the entire song came pouring out of them in about 20 to 30 minutes. Axton herself timed it, claiming it took exactly 22 minutes from start to finish. It's a fantastic story. It adds to the song's mystique, suggesting it was a work of divine or perhaps demonic inspiration. Is it true? It's likely an exaggeration, but one that contains a kernel of truth. The core idea, sparked by that single powerful sentence, did come together very quickly. Durden already had a bluesy melody fragment in his head. Axton, a skilled lyricist and English teacher, immediately knew how to build a narrative around the lonely street and the Heartbreak Hotel. The basic structure, the key lyrical ideas, and the overall mood of the song probably were sketched out in a very short amount of time. The initial burst of creativity was likely as fast and intense as the legend claims. However, writing a song is more than just the initial idea. There is the process of refining lyrics, polishing the melody, working out the chord changes, and making sure everything flows together. It is probable that Axton and Durden spent more than 22 minutes honing their initial sketch into the finished product that they would later demo. The 22-minute story is a classic piece of music business myth-making. It's a great hook. It makes the song seem even more magical. While the reality was probably a bit more workaday, there's no doubt that the creative spark for Heartbreak Hotel was ignited with incredible speed and intensity. The song wasn't just written, it was unleashed. Number 6, what did Sam Phillips think of Elvis's first RCA single? Sam Phillips, the owner of Sun Records, was the man who discovered Elvis Presley. He was a visionary producer who nurtured Elvis's early talent and created the signature slapback echo sound that defined his first recordings. Selling Elvis's contract to RCA for $40,000 was a difficult but necessary business decision for Phillips. It gave his small independent label the capital it needed to survive and to launch the careers of other artists like Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, and Jerry Lee Lewis. But it also meant giving up his most promising star. When Phillips first heard Heartbreak Hotel on the radio, his reaction was complex. On one hand, he was a shrewd businessman. He knew that if Elvis was a huge success for RCA, it would validate his own belief in the singer's talent and make his other son artists more valuable. A rising tide lifts all boats. He needed Elvis to be a superstar. But on a creative level, Phillips was reportedly disappointed. He felt that RCA didn't understand what made Elvis special. The sound of Heartbreak Hotel was a world away from the raw, energetic rockabilly he had crafted at Sun. The RCA production was darker, slower, and more polished. The addition of a piano and the cavernous hallway echo were completely different from the minimalist, rhythm-heavy sound of the Sun sessions. Phillips is said to have thought the song was too gloomy and that the production was muddy. He felt it buried the natural energy and charisma that he had worked so hard to capture on records like Mystery Train and Good Rockin' Tonight. In his view, RCA was trying to turn his wild rockabilly cat into a more conventional pop singer, and in the process, they were sanding off his rough edges. He was right that the sound was different, but he may have underestimated the power of that new, darker direction. Number 5. How much money did Heartbreak Hotel actually make? Heartbreak Hotel was Elvis Presley's first million-selling single. It was a massive commercial success that established him as a national star. But the way the money was divided reveals a lot about how the music industry worked in the 1950s. The financial pie was sliced up into many small pieces. First, there were the songwriters' royalties. The standard publishing deal at the time was a 50-50 split between the songwriters and the publishing company. In this case, the publisher was Hill and Range, which had an exclusive deal with Elvis. So for every dollar the song earned in publishing, 50 cents went to Hill and Range. The other 50 cents went to the credited writers, because Elvis had been given a 1/3 writing credit that 50 cents was split 3 ways. Mae Boren Axton got a third, Tommy Durden got a third, and Elvis Presley got a third. So from the publishing revenue, Axton and Durden each received about 16.7 cents of every dollar. Elvis received 16.7 cents, and the publishing company took 50 cents. Then there were the artist's royalties from record sales. Elvis's initial RCA contract gave him a 5% royalty rate, which was standard for a new artist at the time. This means for a single that sold for around 89 cents, Elvis would earn about 4.5 cents per record sold. Out of that small amount, he had to pay his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, his commission, which was 25% at the time. So Elvis's personal take-home from each record sale was just over 3 cents. While these numbers seem small, they added up quickly. The song sold over 2 million copies in its first year alone. The songwriters, Axton and Durden, received a steady stream of income from the song for the rest of their lives. For Elvis, Heartbreak Hotel was the financial foundation of his empire. It proved he could sell records in massive quantities, which gave Colonel Parker the leverage to negotiate much more lucrative contracts for records, movies, and merchandise in the future. The song didn't just make him famous, it made him a bankable commodity. Number 4, why was Elvis given a songwriting credit? He didn't earn. Elvis Presley is listed as a co-writer on Heartbreak Hotel, but he did not contribute to its writing. This was not a secret, nor was it particularly unusual for the time. The practice was known in the industry as cut-in. It was a business arrangement, pure and simple, and it was orchestrated by Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker. The Colonel was a master negotiator and a brilliant, if ruthless, businessman. He understood that the real long-term money in the music business was not in record sales or concert tickets, but in publishing. A hit song could generate royalties for decades from radio play, cover versions, and use in movies and commercials. By insisting that Elvis get a co-writing credit on songs he recorded, Parker ensured that Elvis would receive a share of this lucrative and ongoing revenue stream. The logic was simple. An artist like Elvis had the power to turn an unknown song into a worldwide hit. The songwriter needed the artist more than the artist needed that specific song. Therefore, the artist's contribution, the performance that made the song famous, was considered a creative act worthy of a share of their writing royalties. It was a form of leverage. Songwriters like Mae Boren Axton were faced with a choice: give up a third of their song or risk having Elvis not recorded at all. For most, the choice was easy. A smaller piece of a giant hit was worth far more than all of a song that nobody ever heard. While the practice seems unfair from a purely creative standpoint, it was a common and accepted part of the music business in the 1950s. It was one of the key strategies Colonel Parker used to build the financial empire that was Elvis Presley Enterprises. Number 3, did the original demo tape survive? Before Elvis and his band entered the RCA studio, they had a guide to work from. It was a simple demonstration recording, or demo, that Mae Born Axton had produced to showcase the song. This demo was crucial to the creation of the final record. It was this recording that Elvis played over and over for the musicians to give them a feel for the song's dark bluesy mood. The demo was recorded in Jacksonville, Florida. Axton hired a local singer named Glenn Reeves to perform the song. Reeves was a talented country and rockabilly singer who had a similar vocal style to Elvis. Axton played piano, and they recorded a simple version of the song on a small tape recorder. The sound was sparse and raw, likely just piano and voice. When Axton presented the song to Elvis, she played him this demo. Elvis loved Reeves' performance, but famously told him, "You're singing it too pretty. I'm going to sing it dirty and bluesy." What happened to that original tape? For many years, it was thought to be lost. It was a piece of rock and roll history that had seemingly vanished. However, in 2005, the tape was rediscovered. It had been in the possession of the family of Glenn Reeves. The recording was eventually released to the public as part of a compilation of Reeves's work. Listening to it is a fascinating experience. Reeves's version is smoother and more straightforward than Elvis's. It lacks the raw, desperate edge and the ghostly echo of the final RCA master. But the core of the song is there: the slow, bluesy tempo, the mournful melody, and the dark lyrics. The demo tape is a rare and invaluable artifact. It's a snapshot of a classic song in its infancy, and it provides a direct look into the creative process, showing the raw material that Elvis Presley would transform into a masterpiece. Number 2. How did the song break racial barriers on the charts? In the segregated music world of the 1950s, the charts were divided along racial lines. There was the main pop chart, the top 100, the country and western chart, and the rhythm and blues chart. It was extremely rare for a song to be a major hit on all three simultaneously. It was even rarer for a white artist to top the R&B chart, which was almost exclusively the domain of black artists. Heartbreak Hotel achieved this remarkable feat, shattering chart conventions and signaling a major cultural shift. The song was released in January 1956. By April, it had hit number 1 on the Billboard Top 100 pop chart. That same month, it also reached number 1 on the country and western chart. This was not entirely surprising. Elvis's music had always blended country and blues, so he had a natural appeal to both audiences. The truly shocking achievement was its performance on the R&B chart. In May 1956, Heartbreak Hotel hit number 1 on the R&B chart, displacing Little Richard's Long Tall Sally. This was a landmark event. It demonstrated that Elvis's sound transcended the rigid categories of the music industry. His vocal style was so deeply infused with the blues and gospel music he had grown up listening to in Tupelo and Memphis that his music resonated authentically with black audiences. He wasn't a white artist covering an R&B song in a watered-down style, as Pat Boone was famous for doing. He was a white artist singing a new song in a style that was deeply and genuinely rooted in black musical traditions. The success of Heartbreak Hotel on all three charts proved that a new integrated youth culture was emerging, one that was connected not by race but by a shared love for the raw, exciting sound of rock and roll. Number 1. What does Heartbreak Hotel have to do with the bellhop? The lyrics of Heartbreak Hotel paint a vivid picture of a dark and desolate place. The street is lonely, the hotel is grim, and the desk clerk is dressed in black. But one of the strangest and most memorable images in the song is that of the bellhop. The lyrics say, "The bellhop's tears keep flowing, the desk clerk's dressed in black." And later, the bellhop's bell is broken, he's got no one to call. It's a bizarre and surreal detail. Why is the bellhop crying? The crying bellhop is not just a random spooky image. It serves a specific purpose in the song's narrative. He is a symbol of the hotel's complete and utter despair. A bellhop's job is to serve guests, to help people, to be active. But in this hotel, there is no one to help. The guests are so consumed by their own sorrow that they are beyond assistance. The bellhop's tears flow because of the overwhelming sadness that surrounds him, and perhaps because his own purpose has been rendered meaningless. His bell is broken, a symbol that communication and service have ceased to exist in this place of ultimate isolation. Mayborn Axton, an English teacher, understood the power of concrete imagery. The crying bellhop and the black-clad desk clerk are not just characters, they are personifications of the hotel's atmosphere. They are the living embodiment of heartbreak. They are fixtures in this emotional purgatory, forced to witness an endless parade of sorrow. The image transforms the hotel from just a building into a living, breathing entity of despair. It's a masterful piece of songwriting, using a single strange detail to convey a universe of sadness. It's one of the key elements that elevates the song from a simple blues number to a haunting piece of American Gothic poetry.